Welcome to Unisys ClearPath Visual IDE 5.0 Key Features Demo. In this demonstration, you will be introduced to the new features added in Unisys ClearPath Visual IDE 5.0. Let's see more on these features. Visual Studio Integrated Debugger. ClearPath Visual IDE has been enhanced to allow debugging MCP object files through the debugging features provided by Visual Studio. Features such as breakpoints, call stack, run to cursor, quick watch, and add watch are now supported. A new debugging option has been added to the debug property page to choose between not debugging, TADS commands and integrated debugger. It is set to integrated debugger by default. All TADS capable languages can be debugged with the integrated debugger. Let's see this feature in detail. Let's open the project properties of this MCP project and open the Debug tab. The debug mode is set to integrated debugging. It can also be changed to TADS commands mode if the user wants to use TADS commands. In this MCP symbol file, let's add a few breakpoints by clicking on the margin next to sequence numbers. Breakpoints are indicated with a red circle on the margin. You can also enable, disable, or remove breakpoints from the breakpoints window. These breakpoints can also be added or removed after the project has started execution. Let's start the project. The symbol file is being compiled, and once it succeeds, the generated object file will be run. Due to the TADS behavior, Visual Studio automatically stops at the first executable statement in the symbol file. The current active statement is indicated by an arrow on the margin. On the toolbar, the Start button has changed to Attach. Also, 3 more buttons are enabled. Step into, Step over, and Step out. The messages from the object file will be displayed in the MCP Program I/O window, and the messages from TADS will be displayed in the TADS Messages window. The call stack window shows a formatted output from the history command of TADS. It is updated after execution stops at a breakpoint. Let's advance the execution to the next statement. Click on the Step Into button. The execution will advance by one statement. The active statement is now sequence 82,000, which is a procedure call to match 1. Let's step into the procedure. The active pointer now points to the first executable statement of the procedure. The updated call stack can be seen in the call stack window. Users can also navigate through the call stack by double-clicking on the entries in the window. To continue execution without stepping into the other statements of the procedure, click on the Step Out button. This will execute all the statements inside the Match 1 procedure and move the active pointer to the next executable statement. The active statement is now sequence number 83,000, which is a procedure call to match. To directly move to the next breakpoint in the code, click on the Attach button. This will send a continue command to TADS. The active statement is now the first breakpoint which was added before starting the project. This is a procedure call to forwarded. To execute the statements present in the procedure without stepping through them, click on the Step Over button. The active statement is now sequence 67,000, which is a procedure call to match 1 of match. Users can also break execution at a specific statement without adding breakpoints. To do that, once you are in break mode, navigate to the statement where you want to break and click on the icon at the end of the statement. This will execute all statements within active statement and that statement and break. Users can also inspect and change values of variables and procedures through Visual Studio. Let's step inside the procedure call. The active statement is now sequence 62,000, which is a display call. We can inspect the value of a variable by right-clicking on the variable and clicking on Quick Watch. The value of A is 2. This is the same value which was provided on sequence 68,000. Users can also inspect the value of a variable continuously by adding that variable to the watch. Right-click on the variable and click on Add Watch. The variable has been added to the watch window. Its value and type is also visible. Whenever the execution stops at a breakpoint, an updated value of the variable will be retrieved from the host. We know that the value of match 3's A is 2 and the value of matches A is 1. Let's step out of this procedure and see the change in value. As soon as the value of a variable changes, it is indicated by a different color in the watch window. The value of A has been updated to 1. To change the value of a variable, double-click on the value and provide a new value. If the value change succeeds, the updated value is retrieved from the host. Let's change the value of A to 10. We can see new value is successfully set. Let's provide an invalid value. An error message is displayed to the user. On clicking on OK, the current value is restored in the window. You can also update the value of a variable through the Quick Watch window. To understand more on the debugging features provided by Visual Studio, please check the Visual Studio documentation. File recovery. ClearPath Visual IDE has been enhanced to recover the project files and edited MCP files when Visual Studio crashes unexpectedly and the files are not saved at that point of time. The files are backed up based on a predefined timer. When the user opens the project, ClearPath Visual IDE searches for any recovered files pertaining to that project and provides user an option to recover them. Let's see this feature in a bit more detail. As a part of this feature, we have added an option called MCP Auto Recover in Options pages. The Save Auto Recover Information Every checkbox will enable the feature. The Auto Recover time field specifies the time interval in minutes with which a backup of the edited files is taken. By default, it is set to 5 minutes. There are 2 more checkboxes related to warning messages. They are selected by default. We will be talking about them later. Let's add a file to the project and edit a few files. We will now wait for the time specified in the MCP Auto Recover Options page. We will speed up the wait time for the demo. "5 minutes have elapsed. Let's kill Visual Studio from the Task Manager to emulate a crash scenario. Let's open the solution again which we crashed before. At this point, before the solution is loaded, if there are any files need to be recovered, the Unisys ClearPath Visual IDE Recovered Files window will appear with list of files, which are selected by default. Clicking on each file displays corresponding file information in the file summary section below, which displays most recent backup date, backup location, recovery location, and host location. For project files, host location will not be displayed. For now, let's uncheck one of the files. Users are not allowed to uncheck project files as it may lead to data loss. The user has 2 options: recover selected files and do not recover. On clicking the Recover Selected Files button, all the selected files will be recovered, and the solution will open automatically. As we unchecked a few files, a warning message is displayed, informing the user that the recovery information will be lost. If you do not want to see the warning again, click on the Do Not Show Me Again checkbox. It can be enabled again from the Auto Recover Options page. On clicking on the Do Not Recover or clicking on Close button, none of the files will be recovered and the recovery information will be deleted once the OK button is clicked. If you do not want to see the warning again, click on the Do Not Show Me Again checkbox. It can be enabled again from the Auto Recover Options page. Let's recover the selected files. The files have been recovered and the solution is opening. Let's quickly verify the contents we edited. Sequence numbers will automatically be generated for newly added lines. As we had selected only one file for recovery, only that file's content has been recovered. Users can also recover files manually without opening projects by clicking on the Recover MCP Files option present under the Files menu. Handling remote files during run. With this release, we have added support for working with files containing remote file statements through Web Enabler. Web Enabler needs to be installed by user to handle the remote files. Let's see this feature in detail. ClearPath Visual IDE looks for Web Enabler installation at the known installation locations. If it is unable to find Web Enabler, user is informed about that. If the Web Enabler installation exists at a non-standard location, users can specify a Web Enabler location by going to Tools, Options, Unisys ClearPath Visual IDE, MCP Web Enabler. As a path is listed here, it means that ClearPath Visual IDE has located an installed version of Web Enabler. Let's start a project containing a symbol file which contains remote file statements. The program will start building. The messages will be displayed in the output window. Once the build is complete, the MCP Program I/O window will be displayed. Let's click on the Attach button to continue. As this file has remote file statements, Web Enabler window will open. Any remote statements will be displayed in the Web Enabler window and all other messages will be displayed in the MCP Program I/O window. Working with files stored locally. ClearPath Visual IDE has been enhanced to work with files which are stored on the local PC. The existing mechanism to add files to MCP projects has been updated to handle local files. Users can add new or existing local files to a project and build them on a MCP host. Let's see this feature in more detail. To add existing local files to MCP project, right-click on the project and select Add and then select Existing Item option. A browse window will appear with two tabs, MCP hosts and local. The local tab displays local files. By default it will navigate to the desktop folder. Navigate through this dialog to select and add a local file to the MCP project. Once the file is added to the project, it can be opened and edited the same way as files added from MCP hosts. To add new local files to the MCP project, right-click on the project and select Add and then select New Item option. Add New Item window will appear. Give a name. Select the file type. Click on the Is Local checkbox. Clicking on this checkbox hides the location field, which holds the MCP path. Click on Add. If the given file name is valid, then a new file with the given name will be added to the project. Once the file is added to the project, it can be opened and edited the same way as files added from MCP hosts. To build an added local file, users need to provide a mapped host location under File Properties. To do that, right-click on the file in Solution Explorer and click on Properties. The Properties window will be displayed. Click on the ellipsis button next to the mapped host location field. Browse and select a location on the MCP host where you want to upload the file. On building, the local copy of the file will be uploaded to the host and a build will be initiated. If there are any errors, they will be displayed in the error list window. Respond to waiting entries. Users can now respond to waiting entries while building their programs through ClearPath Visual IDE. Waiting entries raised during default builds, woeful builds, and command line builds can be handled. Let's see this feature in a bit more detail. This project contains a DASTL file which has already been compiled once to create the database. On trying to compile it again, the compiler will ask for a confirmation to overwrite it. Let's build the project. The MCP Build Program I/O window is displayed whenever there is a waiting entry while building from the Visual Studio UI. To respond to waiting entries, type an appropriate response in the Enter AX input box and then click the Accept Response AX button or select the Discontinue DS button by clicking the drop-down arrow. Once the AX button is pressed, the appropriate messages and the current tasks can be seen in the window. Once the build is done, the MCP Build Program I/O window will close automatically and the messages will be displayed in the output window. We have also added additional command line parameter to accept waiting entries during batch builds. The AX waiting entry switch can be used to specify the AX input. If this is not provided, ClearPath Visual IDE will send DS command to the host. Support for XREF files. In the earlier releases of ClearPath Visual IDE, support for performing different cross-referencing actions was added, however it was based on static information. With this release it has been extended to support XREF files. The same options can be used to perform cross-referencing using XREF files. The user can now perform cross-referencing actions with and without compiling the file. A new options page has been added where the user can choose between dynamic cross-referencing and cross-referencing using XREF files. By default, it is set to dynamic referencing. The option to choose the cross-referencing mode is only applicable for ALGOL and COBOL flavor of languages. For all other file kinds, XREF files are used. Let's see more about this feature. Let's open a sample ALGOL file. This file has already been compiled and its XREF files have been created on the host. When we open the Options page by navigating through Tools, Options, ClearPath Visual IDE, MCP Cross-Referencing, we can see that there are two sections, Current ID and Cross-Referencing. The Current ID section was added in earlier release. Let's talk about the cross-referencing section. These two radio buttons can be used to specify the cross-referencing mode the user wants to use. These options are applied globally. For now, let's keep this to dynamic and click on the OK button. In the Solution Explorer, let's see the properties of the file. There is a new section under File Properties which specifies the names of the XREF files. It currently says not applicable because the cross-referencing mode is set to dynamic. Let's open the dialog again and change it to XREF files. In the editor, right-click, Referencing, and click on Options. This will take us directly to the MCP cross-referencing page. Let's change the mode to XREF files and click on the OK button. If we see the file properties now, we can see the names of XREF files which have been loaded. If the ClearPath Visual IDE is unable to automatically locate XREF files, these two fields will display Not Found. Users can also click on the ellipsis button to specify a file. All other cross-referencing features will work the same way as they work for other editors. Build without Woeful. ClearPath Visual IDE has been enhanced to support compiling all the MCP language file types directly by setting Build Action to compile through File Properties. For the file types, Pascal, Pascal 83, Fortran 77, CC, Binder and RPG, any errors generated during build will be displayed in the error list window. Let's see more on this. Users can now set the build action to compile for all language files. Let's try compiling a project containing a Pascal 83 file. As you can see, the messages from the compiler are displayed in the output window. As this file has errors, they will be displayed in the error list window. Double-clicking on any of them moves the cursor to the appropriate line in the editor. We have also updated the output window to allow navigation. Double-clicking on the line number also navigates to the appropriate location in the editor. Users can also compile the MCP languages for which the compilers are no longer available, such as BASIC, COBOL, CPP, ISBOL, Fortran, Java, LCOBOL, Modula 2, OHNE, Xfortran and SANS. This is being done to allow compilation on MCP hosts which still have older versions of those compilers present on them. For these languages, error list and output navigation will not be available. Default location. The input fields present in different windows can be divided into four types: patch, symbol, object and XREF. Users can now specify a default location for them. The specified values are used if no value is present in the field. Additionally, the behavior of last browsed path has also been updated. ClearPath Visual IDE now maintains separate last browsed path for all four types. The priority for using the path is default location path, last browsed path for specific input field type, last available browsed path. If none of these are available, ClearPath Visual IDE navigates to the server list to specify default locations. Click on Tools, Options, Unisys ClearPath Visual IDE, MCP Default Location. A dialog containing fields to allow specifying default location is displayed. The different fields can be used to specify default file paths for each path type. Users can type a path or click on the Browse button to select a path. Additionally, the server, family, and user code drop-down fields can be used to quickly specify default paths. Selecting a server will automatically select the family based on the user's primary family, and the user code field will display the MyUserCode token. Once the server, family, and user code are selected, clicking the Apply button will add those paths to all four fields. It is required to use the same servers for all four paths. The Reset button can be used to restore the values in the fields with which the dialog was opened. The Clear button can be used to clear all the values. Let's specify a few values for a few fields. We will add an existing file to the project. Due to the default location for symbol files, the Add Existing Item dialog directly navigates to that path. Let's add a file from a different path. If we try to add a file again, instead of using the last browsed path, it will use the default path. We will now try to provide an output location under Project Properties. Due to the default location, clicking on the Browse button will directly open default location for object files. Let's set the patch mode of the file in project to manual. As there is no default location, and the user is browsing a path for patch type the first time, the last available browsed path, which is for symbol path, will be used here. If there was a default location specified, that would have been used. Import files with different format. ClearPath Visual IDE has been enhanced to allow importing local files to MCP hosts. The file type can be anything from structured, unstructured, or MCP files stored locally. Users can fix sequence numbers or generate sequence numbers in the imported file. Users can also generate MARC ID for the imported text. Let's see this feature in more detail. Right-click on the project menu and click Import File to Project option. Import files with different format dialog appears where introduction for this feature is displayed. Click on the Next button. Select Import File and Host Path page appears. In the Select the File to be Imported text box, specify the location of the locally stored file to import the contents from. To specify a location, you can either type the path or click on the Browse button to locate the path. Give a name for the file in the File Name text box. In the File Location text box, specify the MCP location where file needs to be saved. Click on Next. Select Import Configuration page will appear. There are two options. Create a new import configuration and use an existing import configuration. You can create a new configuration here or use a previously saved configuration. Let's select Create a new import configuration option. Click on Next. Select File Type and Import Type page will appear. Select the file type from the drop-down list to choose the file format to which you want the content to be imported. By default, ALGOL is selected. Based on the file type selected, the details will be displayed in the grid below. Click on Next. Specify File Format page will appear. This page can be used to specify the file format of the file from where you are importing. Select the file is a text file with CRLF if the selected file has well-defined records. By default, this option is selected. Select the file has fixed length records to enter the record value in the record size box. The record size box is used to break the whole content to different records. The record size box is enabled only if this option is selected. Convert tabs to space option is used to convert the tab character in the file to spaces based on the value given. For example, if 4 is mentioned, then a tab is converted to 4 spaces. Click on Next. Specify Text options page will appear. This page can be used to specify the text area in the file being imported. Specify text start and end position from the file by using start and length controls, respectively. By default, the values are displayed based on the file type selected. If Read Text to the End of the Line checkbox is selected, then the complete line from the start position to the end of the line is considered as text. Also, if this option is selected, the length drop-down will be disabled. Click on Next. Specify Sequence Number options page will appear. This page can be used to specify the sequence number information in the file being imported. Select the file contains sequence number option to specify start and end position of sequence number from the file by using start and length controls, respectively. By default, the values are displayed based on the file type selected. If you do not want to use the sequence number present in file, then you can select Create Sequence Numbers option to use the multiples of sequence numbers from the list. Use multiples of drop-down is enabled only if this option is selected. The default value is 1000. This page will not appear if the file type selected does not support sequence number. Click on Next. Specify Mark ID Options page will appear. This page can be used to specify the Mark ID information in the file being imported. Select Leave the Mark ID field blank option to leave the Mark ID information blank in the code editor. Select Read Mark IDs from the existing file option to specify start and end position of Mark ID from the file by using start and length controls respectively. By default, the values are displayed based on the file type selected. Select the Fill the Mark ID field with a specific string option to enter the new Mark ID information in the string text box. The string text box character length is based on the selected file Mark ID length. This page will not appear if the file type selected does not support Mark ID. Click on Next. Save Import Configuration page will appear. Select the Don't Save This Configuration option to continue without saving the configuration. Select the Save This Configuration as option to save the configuration. You can type the new configuration name in the box or select the configuration from the list. If you save the configuration, all the values selected in the previous pages will be saved. Next time when we open the Import Wizard, we can select Use an existing configuration in Select Import Configuration page and import. Click on Next. Review Choices page will appear. Summary of all the selected information such as the local Windows file path, file type, text length, tab spaces, sequence numbers, and Mark ID length are displayed in the dialog box. Click Finish button. An empty file with the specified name is created in the selected host path and will be added to the project with the imported content in the editor. Only after saving the file the content will be saved in host. Kerberos Authentication. Users can now connect using Kerberos Authentication with ClearPath Visual IDE. For Kerberos Authentication to work, users need to configure their hosts to work with Kerberos, and the user code should be updated with your Kerberos Principal ID. To log in with Kerberos, add the host to the Server Explorer. Right-click and click on Connect as logged-in user. ClearPath Visual IDE will try to connect using Kerberos. After the connection is successful, you can check the authentication method by right-clicking on the server and clicking on Properties. This option also supports NTLM authentication. It tries to connect with Kerberos first. If Kerberos fails, it tries to connect using NTLM authentication. Otherwise, it displays an error to the user. Special commands. ClearPath Visual IDE has been enhanced to support few of the most used commands: compile special, run special, and start special. With this, users can compile, run, or start without the need of building the whole project. Let's understand how to access them. Click on Tools. The commands can be accessed by clicking on the appropriate option. Let's see Start Special. With Start Special, you can start or schedule a WOFL file with or without the project. The WOFL job file field holds the path of the WOFL file which will be started from this dialog. You can type the WOFL file path or use the Browse button. Any WOFL parameters can be specified by using the Parameters field. If you want to schedule a WOFL, the Schedule Time field can be used. The UI also provides options to retain the provided values. Clicking on Start will start the WOFL on the MCP and the output will be displayed in the output window. If there is any waiting entry, it can be handled via the MCP Build Program IO window. Let's see Run Special. With Run Special, you can execute any object file existing on the host with or without the project. The object file name field holds the path of the object file which will be executed from this dialog. You can type the file path or use the Browse button to choose a specific object file. Any parameters can be specified by using the Parameters field. The Task Attributes field can be used to specify any task attributes. Clicking on Run will start the execution on the MCP host. The output is displayed in the MCP Program IO window. Let's see Compile Special. With Compile Special, you can compile any supported language file. The file needs to be a part of the project. The source file name displays the path to the source file to be compiled. The path cannot be edited and is based on the currently selected file. The compiler name field is used to specify a compiler code file to be used to compile the source file. This is an optional field. If you don't provide this, the default compiler based on the current primary and secondary pack will be used. The output file name field displays the location where the object file will be created. It is automatically pre-filled based on the current file name. The task attributes field can be used to specify any task attributes to compile the file. You can also provide any compiler control options to the compiler. Clicking on Compile will start the compilation and any errors will be displayed in the error list window. If there is any waiting entry, it can be handled via the MCP Build Program IO window. Migration from other tools. ClearPath Visual IDE has been enhanced to provide options to migrate from Programmer's Workbench or MCP Eclipse. Users can migrate the list of configured servers from Programmer's Workbench and MCP Eclipse. Users can also create ClearPath Visual IDE projects from the recently used files and projects in Programmer's Workbench. The Eclipse workspace containing MCP projects can also be migrated as ClearPath Visual IDE projects. Let's migrate the servers from Programmer's Workbench and MCP Eclipse. To do that, open the MCP Server Explorer by clicking on View, MCP Server Explorer. On the toolbar of MCP Server Explorer, click on the Import Servers from Programmer's Workbench for ClearPath MCP. A dialog will be displayed which will display the servers configured in Programmer's Workbench. Click on the Import button and those servers will be added to ClearPath Visual IDE. The servers will be added with a postfix as from PWB to indicate their source. To migrate servers from MCP Eclipse, click on the Import Servers from MCP Eclipse. A dialog listing the servers configured in MCP Eclipse will be displayed. Click on the Import button and those servers will be added to ClearPath Visual IDE. The servers will be added with a postfix as from ME to indicate their source. Let's migrate recently used files and projects from Programmer's Workbench. To do that, navigate to Tools, Migrate from Programmer's Workbench for ClearPath MCP. A dialog will be displayed. Click on the Next button. Choose whether you want to migrate recently used files or projects by clicking on the appropriate button. Let's click on Migrate Files. Provide a location where you want to create the migrated solution. Based on the selected files, different projects will be created containing those files. The solution location defaults to the default Visual Studio Solution folder. Click on the Next button. A list of most recently opened files will be displayed. By default, all are checked for migration. Uncheck the ones which you do not want to migrate. Click on the Next button. A list of most recently used patch files will be displayed with their symbol path. By default, all are checked for migration. Uncheck the ones which you do not want to migrate. Click on the Migrate button. The migration progress will be displayed. Users might be asked to log into the server. Once the migration is complete, the Finish button will be enabled. Click on it to open the solution. As we had selected 2 files for migration, 2 projects have been created. Let's open the dialog again to migrate Programmer's Workbench projects. Click on the Next button and click on Migrate Projects. Provide a solution name and click on the Next button. A list of most recently used projects will be displayed. By default, all are checked for migration. Uncheck the ones which you do not want to migrate. Users can also migrate a specific project if not listed here by using the Provide a Location to Programmer's Workbench for ClearPath MCP project option. Let's choose a project from the one which is listed and click on the Migrate button. The migration progress will be displayed. Users might be asked to log into the hosts. Once the migration is complete, the Finish button will be enabled. Click on it to open the solution. Let's migrate MCP Eclipse Workspace. To do that, navigate to Tools, Migrate from MCP Eclipse. A dialog will be displayed. Provide the MCP Eclipse Workspace path. Solution name. Click on the Migrate button. The migration progress will be displayed. Users might be asked to log into the server. Once the migration is complete, the Finish button will be enabled. Click on it to open the solution. After migration from Programmer's Workbench and MCP Eclipse, the created solution can be used to work with files directly. Improvements to patch mode. To directly work with patch files present on the host, we had added support for manual patch mode in earlier release. We have made it more simpler in this release, by providing a single UI, where users can provide the source file name, and the patch file name, and add it directly to the project. The source file is added in manual patch mode. The patch file location is set to the patch file name. Let's see how to do this. Right-click on the project and click on Add and then Existing Item, Patched. In this dialog, provide the source file name and patch file name. The source file name and patch file name should have the same file kind. Click on the Add button. The file gets added to the project. If we see the file properties, we can observe the patch mode is set to manual and the patch file location field displays the selected patch file name. After opening the file, any modified lines are displayed with a purple bar in the margin. Also, the deleted lines are displayed by a red triangle in the margin. Improvements to editor. The ClearPath Visual IDE editor has been enhanced for the Pascal 83, Fortran 77, and Dastel languages. Features such as syntax highlighting, comment-uncomment selection and IntelliSense support are now available. Syntax highlighting for Pascal 83 and Fortran 77. The ClearPath Visual IDE editor has been enhanced to support syntax highlighting for Pascal 83 and Fortran 77 language. Items like reserved keywords, comments, and string literals are highlighted in the editor. Comment-uncomment selection for Pascal 83, Fortran 77, and Dastel. Users can now perform comment and uncomment selection for Pascal 83, Fortran 77, and Dastel languages. Clicking on comment and uncomment selection adds and removes appropriate comment character to mark or unmark a line, commented or uncommented. IntelliSense support for Pascal 83 and Dastel. For Pascal 83 and Dastel language, additional IntelliSense features like auto-complete, quick info, pair matching, and pair completion are now available. The optional IntelliSense support features for these languages are required to be installed. Improvements to Browse dialog. The Browse dialog is a common dialog which is used by different ClearPath Visual IDE features to browse and locate files and folders from MCP. The dialog has been updated to add a few more features. Features such as add server while browsing, refresh items, delete, rename, or view properties of a file, search functionality. Let's see these features in detail. Add server while browsing. Until now, if a user wanted to add a server, the only way was to add them through Server Explorer. With this release, users can also add servers through the Browse dialog. This can be done by clicking on the Add Server button and providing the details. Once the server is added, it is connected automatically, and the user can browse files. Refresh the current items from the host. Users can now fetch an updated list of the current files and folders under a folder with the click of a button. With this, the user does not need to close the dialog and reopen it. This can be done by clicking on the Refresh Directory button. Options to delete, rename, or view properties of a file. ClearPath Visual IDE has been enhanced to allow users to delete, rename, and view properties of a file by right-clicking on it. For files which are added in the project or added as patch, the delete and rename options will be disabled. For servers and folders, right-clicking will not display any menu. Search functionality. ClearPath Visual IDE users can now quickly filter the displayed list of file and folders by typing text in the search text box. The searched text is reset whenever a different location is browsed or the user closes the dialog. Improvements to Mark ID. The editor options have been enhanced with respect to Mark ID. In addition to specifying a static Mark ID, users can now specify a dynamic Mark ID based on wildcards for current date and time. Users can also completely stop applying Mark ID to changed lines automatically while saving the file. Let's open the Editor Options page. Dynamic Mark ID. Users can now choose to dynamically update the Mark ID based on wildcards. To choose a dynamic Mark ID, click on the Dynamic button next to the Mark ID text box. Create a dynamic Mark ID string by clicking on any of the buttons. Let's choose hour, minute, and second. A sample Mark ID is displayed in the example text box. Let's confirm the selection by clicking on the OK button. While editing the file, the Mark ID field is automatically updated based on the current values of the selected Mark ID string. Apply Mark ID to changed lines. Users can now choose to not to automatically apply Mark ID to changed lines while saving the files. The default of this is checked. If you uncheck this option, users will not be able to specify Mark ID through this screen. The users, however, will still be able to select a few lines and provide Mark ID for them. Improvements to project properties. The MCP project properties pages have been updated to add a few more fields like XREF location, compiler name, compiler control options, and task attributes. An option to schedule Woeful Run has also been added. For the default build section, ClearPath Visual IDE also displays the default values for the fields which will be used while building the MCP project. The user interface has also been updated to make it more streamlined. Let's see more on this. Let's create a new MCP project and open project properties. The fields have been organized into different sections. Also, a few more fields have been added. The XREF location field can be used to specify the location to create XREF files once a source file which creates XREF files has been built. The compiler name field can be used to specify a compiler to be used to compile the symbol file. The checkboxes in the compiler control options can be used to specify them to the compiler. Except the debug build option, all other options can be specified by the user. In debug mode, debug build will be checked. In release mode, it will not be checked. The task attributes field can be used to provide task attributes to the compiler. Task attributes have also been added to the debug tab to provide task attributes while the object file is run. In the custom build, a woeful build can be scheduled by clicking on the change button and selecting the desired time. Currently there are no files in the project, all fields are visible, and no default values are being displayed. Only the compiler section has default values. Let's add an algol file to the project. As this is the first file being added to the project, its build action is set to compile. The project properties page has been updated. There are default values present under the output file name and output location fields. Also, as the file type being compiled is not a DASTL, the database section has been hidden. The user is also allowed to choose only those compiler control options which are applicable for non-DASTL files. Let's add a DASTL file and set the build action of that as compile. The output section has been hidden as it is only applicable for non-DASTL files. Also, a default database name has been filled in. The compiler control options have also been updated. Only the ones applicable for DASTL builds are now enabled. If there are no files set as compile, the build property page will behave in the same way as it behaves when there are no files added to the project. The default values have been added to indicate what values will be used if the user does not specify any other value. If a different value is specified in these fields, they will be used instead. Auto Reset Build Action. ClearPath Visual IDE has been enhanced to automatically reset the build action of other files to none when the user changes the build action of a file to compile. This feature ensures that at a time only one file is set to compile and saves users time. Unisys offers a comprehensive set of features in ClearPath Visual IDE to enrich the value of your IDE requirements. Please contact your Unisys representative or visit unisys.com.